All right, welcome to today's episode of the Sell Side Podcast. I'm Michael Stanley, and today I've got my good friend Josh Wolfe. Josh, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Josh owns a company called Wolfe Co Media. It's been really successful and has a really interesting story. So let's just dive right in. Josh, give us a little background on you and how the concept came together and how you got to where you are.
Sure. So, I have always loved stories as a consumer first and then as a creator later. And so, when I was in school, I majored in English and from there went into banking, which makes a ton of sense, right?
Very logical.
I think what society told me was that I needed to get out of school, find a safe job, make a good salary, find the perfect wife, have the 2.5 kids and the golden retriever and all of that. And so, I'm not knocking that at all. I just believe that, that's sort of the path that I thought that I was supposed to take. And so worked in banking for 2 years and just didn't enjoy it, and on the, conversely, wasn't any good at it, I don't feel like. And so they probably should have fired me long before I quit because I got really good at solitaire on my computer. But left there and, 2008, 9, I think was when I did, and just realized that, man, I'm gonna wake up one day and I am gonna have the wife and the kids, and I'm gonna just be stuck in a career path that's not for me, or stuck in a life that's not for me. And so, I just kind of had this epiphany that, hey, one life, it goes quickly, man, make the most of it. So left there, moved to Colorado for a couple years, just was a ski bum out there, worked in restaurants, had a really good time, discovered my love of photography. And so went back to school, got my master's in visual arts, just photography, videography, because I thought, if I am going to pursue a career as a storyteller, combining command of the English language with the visual part of it, I think would give me a leg up. And so the magazine industry was my target. And so after grad school, ended up getting a job with a national hunting and fishing publication called Sporting Classics over in Columbia, South Carolina, and worked on the magazine as an associate editor. And then I became the editor of their digital publication. Learned a lot there. Really was able to continue honing my skills as a storyteller and really a writer. And then had the opportunity to work on a golf magazine while I was there called The Golf Sport, which is now defunct. And looking back, that was actually the first business that I ever started. Myself and a partner put that magazine together and gave it a go. And just that's a brutal industry, magazine and publishing. And so, once I stop here a second. So, from Sporting Classics, when I was there, I got an email from a lady named Lisa Snuggs, and she was the executive director of the Southeastern Outdoor Press Association. Is a one of the writer groups that I was a part of, and she the subject of the email just said capital J, capital O, capital B, job. And she knew a young guy who had started a marketing and ad agency in Nashville. And I wasn't looking for a job, but she just like, hey, I saw this job description. Like, I feel like this would be perfect for you. And I go to read the job description, and it says, I quote, if the only thing you love more than hunting and fishing is writing about it, this job's for you.
Dead on.
Okay. I'm gonna explore that, So I went through the application process, got an interview, went over to Nashville and met the team, and it just, the energy in that place captivated me right away, just grabbed me. And so they offered me a job, and I took it, and I moved to Nashville. And I started learning something about something called company culture that had never been in the vocabulary of any place that I had worked prior. The team was tight knit. We hung out after hours. I just learned a lot about really the way the world was unfolding in a digital sense. And so I was there for a total of 4 years. And in that time, this would be something you would have been interested in, is the company was called Caddis. It was acquired by a much larger agency called Lewis Communications, which was started in Mobile in the 50s. They have offices in Mobile, Birmingham, and Nashville, and just a fantastic company. Like it was a good fit for our small company, Caddis, evolving into, or I guess integrating into this team and helping them really on the digital side is where Lewis need help. But, from my perspective, I was on the content team. And so Lewis brought just a lot of resources. They had a full video and photography department. And so I was able to spend a lot of time around men and women who had been working in that department for a few decades. And so just the knowledge and the experience that I gained from that really helped build upon the foundation of what I had gotten in grad school and either even further before that, just my love of storytelling. About 2019, I got recruited by an apparel company out in Colorado. Um, my wife and I ended up taking the job. My wife and I moved out there to run their marketing department. And, it's just one of those things where the chemistry wasn't there, and I'm not knocking anybody, just when chemistry is not there, like chemistry is an unexplainable thing, between friends. Like, why did you and I become friends so quickly? Like, you can't explain that. It's like, why do you love your wife? Well, it's not because he's funny or smart or something like that. It's like it's the limbic part of the brain where a language does not exist for the feelings that you have. And so
Yeah.
was there for about a year and just didn't love the situation, and ended up Amy and I got married on April the 25th of 2020, so right during COVID. That following Monday, I quit my job, and then a few days later on May the 1st, I started doing a little freelance work while I was looking for the next full-time thing. And that first client, which I think paid me like $400 the first month, and I was like, yes, like making a little money,
Right.
it's something full-time is going to come. Like I'm not worried about it. And then it just started to snowball from there. And, luckily I had some good relationships with folks, and the timing was just right that they were looking for some help with marketing and advertising. And, I was able to offer that. And then, so after about a year and a half, still in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, working from home out there, Amy and I started talking and thought, hey, if we're going to start a family, and B, give this business a real go, there was not really an opportunity to grow internally or externally, especially internally out where we were. There's a talent pool that just didn't exist. And so from North Alabama, grew up in Madison, all my friends are here, all my resources here, the clientele we had built up, most of them were east of the Mississippi River. So we ended up moving to Athens, Alabama, and made our first hire in March of 22. So a little over 3 years ago, have just really started to grow in the Athens and North Alabama community, as far as getting involved and trying to grow the business there. And now 5 years later, that freelance work that we were trying to do has grown into a full service marketing and advertising agency, and just I don't know, man. I think it's like I look back and it's almost like ignorance that got me here. I just didn't know any better. I didn't realize like, oh, starting a business during COVID was a bad idea. I never set out to say like, I'm going to own my own business. And so it's really just accidental and just trying to make the best of it.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. You talk about culture, and I totally agree with the way that you described it. And, listening to that journey, that's kind of seems to be your North Star, and ended up kind of putting you in a position to run your own company, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because you mentioned something about culture, as it guided you through these different firms. you know, how does that affect Wolfe Co? And what are some things that, you've kind of gone through over that journey
Yeah.
that are specific to culture?
Culture is, as a leader, it is what you create or it is what you allow to happen.
Mm.
And so in my role, I try to be very proactive in the culture we create. Right now, the team that we have is A players. It's a small team, but it is a super efficient team. And so the work we're turning out right now has been fantastic, and the credit is all due to the team. I'm just trying, my goal, my role is to help provide them with the resources, the feedback, maybe a few things I know just from having done this for the last decade, a little experience to really help guide them in the right direction. And two, like we're in right now what I am calling a season of change.
Mm-hmm.
We have set a really big, hairy, audacious goal, I think, to quote Jim Collins,
Yeah.
who might have come up with that for ourselves. And we've set individual commitments for every employee. We've got this little one pager card that we all have internally, and it goes down through our goals, how we're going to get there, our mission, our strategy, our values, our individual commitments, and then how we measure if we're doing well or not. And so in this season, I would say we have made some changes internally where we have just had to make some really hard decisions on the team where, certain people can help you get to this point in your life, right? But if your ship is trying to sail to this point, those people are not always necessarily the right people to help you get there, right?
The founder's dilemma.
What's that?
The founder's dilemma.
The founder's dilemma, which are many, yes, as I have learned. And it's been same externally too. There have been clients who've been with us since the early days where now that we are charting this course, we realize that they're not right for us and we're not right for them. So there has been the parting of ways, both internally and externally, as we start to move in a new direction towards our ultimate goal.
Yeah, I mean, change management is something that comes up on this podcast a lot. It's super difficult to reorient your paradigm periodically through the course of a business. And
yeah, and it's hard too. It's like I said, this accidental freelance thing that became what it is today. It's like it's not something I'd ever planned for. It's not something I ever really thought of growing up. And so now that I'm in it, and I was telling you earlier, a lot of the folks I've heard on your podcast, they say, well, I'm wondering what I have to bring to it. And then they go on and crush it. Like all your guests have been wonderful. And so I'm honored to be, considered in that category. I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
But I guess like the thing for me right now is like we just hit our 5-year mark and we're in the grinder, man. It's grueling, it is tough, but it is great.
Yeah.
It has just been really, really a great life's journey that I never thought that I would have the opportunity or never even really considered was part of my path.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, that's a great perspective. I wonder, as you talk about, and I think this is actually a pretty common path that, you slide into this thing and you find product market fit with something you're doing, and then you realize, man, I can do this myself.
Yeah.
And it's really organic and it's really natural. But then there's this moment where you have to say, okay, it was super organic before, but now I got to get really proactive
Mhm.
about the direction of this company. Was there any kind of crystallizing moment for you in that regard?
Yes, and it had to do with some recent hires that we made that showed me the kind of work that we collectively as a team could do.
Mm,
We hire for character first and we teach for skills. And so that's the that was our process, and some hires we made late last year and another one early this year is a people of great character, moral integrity that we all liked hanging out with each other, and B with a pretty good set of skills and an intense desire to learn. We live in the digital informational age. We live in the information age, right? It's like you can learn anything by the little black box you carry around in your pocket, on our computers. And so as a company, I've never been a micromanager. I don't like to micromanage. And so we'll tell you, hey, here's what your role is. Here's why you're doing what you're doing. And then the how is up to you to figure out. It's kind of like as a kid, you learn to swim, you jump in the deep end, there's somebody there to guide you the first few times. But then it's like you jump in, and that person who's guiding you is maybe 6 or 8 feet back. And yes, if you start to go under, they're going to be right there to help you. But ultimately, it's up to you to figure out, are you going to sink or are you going to swim?
right. I mean, in your industry specifically, the pace of change is probably a lot greater than elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the character. We had Chase Wortman on recently, and he spoke about like he has this 2 meeting kind of hiring process where his whole deal is you have to change the context for the second meeting. So the first meeting may be in the office and everybody's kind of talking about business things, but the second one is going to be a lunch or a dinner where there's a couple people that are going to have to work in close proximity to this person.
Yeah.
And it's kind of feeling those things out. I think it goes all the way back to your point about culture being something that's tangible, but there's no formula to it.
Yeah. There's really not. And I really enjoyed what Chase had to say about how their hiring process goes, because we try to do something similar as well, where we'll do a phone interview, excuse me, then we'll do an in-person interview. And if you're going to be a content creator helping us with strategy, you're either going to work on a video project with the team to
Mhm.
see how you fit in, and you're going to take it home and you're going to edit it yourself and put a video together, or you're going to spend a couple hours with the team. So, and then, we'll spend a few hours with folks, and then we'll typically take them to lunch. It's important to see like how they would treat a waiter or
Yeah.
a staff at a restaurant. How do they interact with the team like in a setting like that? And then one of the last parts is I try to have everybody meet my wife.
That's
She's
awesome.
she's a great judge of character. So if it's a video project, she might come to the office and be the subject of the video, or you know we may go meet her somewhere like in a different setting to let her kind of gauge and feel out this person.
That's incredible.
Or she I would say like she's not an employee of the company, she's not a part of the company, but yes, she is like she's everything to do with the company
I mean, that
because
sounds like, earned income to me, W-2. We set that whole situation up and
yeah,
clean the tax picture up.
yeah.
So kind of drilling down a little bit deeper into this 5-year journey, and we've talked a lot about culture, but with you personally, every entrepreneur that I talk to has some strengths and they have some weaknesses. And honestly, most of the time, the weaknesses come into sharp relief at some point on that journey. What are some of the ones that you've kind of, realized about yourself, and how have you addressed them?
The weaknesses,
Hmm.
understanding how to run a business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like I'm a inherently right-brained person. Like I think creatively. Like I love the creative aspect of it. And so when it gets to like the bookkeeping and the finances and the banking and like all the important parts of running a business, like that that's something that I have struggled with. The ways that I've overcome that is one, reading biographies of founders and things that people have gone through and learning from that, listening to podcasts, just reading a lot.
Hmm.
And then by luck or happenstance or whatever, and the universe has really sent some great people into my life. The other day, somebody said, "What is your superpower?" They asked a group, and I got to thinking, I'm like, I don't know if this is mine or not, but what the people that have come into my life at the right times in my life has made everything better.
Mm.
From friendships to professional relationships, it has just helped me along the way, and it's something that I'm just so grateful
Yeah.
for is the help that I have gotten. The old saying that it's lonely at the top, it is, but man, I've got so much support. And I was able to find like the right people at the right time that I needed to help us along the way. Like growing up, I had a baseball coach that is an accountant who is our accountant. My best friend is a banker. So that relationship was established. I come from a family of attorneys. So it's like kind of just happened. I don't know if it is happenstance or what you want to call it, but those relationships have been super helpful, and they've helped. I would say strengthen my weaknesses, which I wouldn't say have necessarily become strengths, but they have at least helped the balance.
Yeah. And I mean, that alone, you talk to a lot of folks who, hey, I'm doing this on my own. I don't need any help.
Yeah,
And it, where I sit with helping people figure out how to eventually exit their business, man, you have a 30-year career of this.
yeah,
It's really hard to figure out how to open your hand and either pass that to the next generation or
yeah,
sell it to another
yeah,
company, or really figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life.
yeah.
And so, I was, it sounds like your superpower to me is being able to say, hey, I've got a weakness here. You're a close friend and you have a strength there. Let's collaborate. Please help.
I think if you can remove ego from the equation, it helps a lot. And I'm not saying that I've done that completely. We've all got egos,
Oh, yeah.
right? But I am not by nature an optimistic person.
Hmm. Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Am I if
I would have never guessed that.
I'm not. And
Okay.
so it takes a lot of work for me to work from a place of optimism and gratitude.
Mm.
So that is something I would say over the last 18 months that I've worked really, really hard on is to shape my perspective. I heard there's a guy named John Gordon who is I guess I don't know if you call him a life coach or something. He's got a great podcast, some great books out, but he's got a quote that says, "If you are blessed, you cannot be stressed." And that's scientifically proven. And so anytime that I find myself stressed, in the grinder, worried, laying awake at night, wondering about, how some things are going to pan out, I can put myself in a place of realizing that I'm very fortunate to be where I am. And I'm so grateful for not only the opportunities that I have at work and with Wolfe Co, but with my wife, my son, who's 5 months old. We're happy, we're healthy. And so it's it has taken a lot of work, but that has helped shape my perspective to operate from a place of gratitude, which in turn leads to more optimism
Yeah.
and leaving that negativity sort of aside because the mind will trick you, right? Your mind plays tricks on you constantly. It tells you that you know things aren't going to go the way you want to, or things aren't going to work out. But and that's not true. Like if you can look at it from the perspective of your higher self, then I believe that you're able to get to that place of
Yeah.
gratitude.
I mean, that's absolutely true, right? And it's also very difficult to be creative in kind of that pessimistic place, at
Yeah,
least for me,
yeah,
um, a lot of the kind of M&A stuff, structuring deals, things like that involves a decent amount of creativity. And,
yeah,
if I'm not kind of taking a step back on a regular basis, it's easy to get so in the weeds and problems become
yeah.
way too massive.
And what do you do? How do you take a step back? What are some of the things you do to clear your mind?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, so solitude is really important. You and I have connected over hunting and fishing, and that's a place where I find a lot of solitude and perspective.
Yeah.
My journey prayer is a big part of it. And then, my wife, I married Catherine is perfectly opposite from me. And so it's often really, worst case scenario, it jolts me into like, whoa, my way of seeing this is not the only way of seeing it. In the best case scenario, it's totally complementary and it really brings gratitude. And I can see it in a way that is a lot more optimistic than kind of the way I've been looking at it. Um, Switching gears a little bit, you gave me a great segue into this, but you talked about being at Lewis and going through some M&A activity with Caddis being bought by Lewis. And
Yeah, I was never a part of that stuff.
but I mean, you lived through that inorganic growth kind of phase, right?
Yeah.
So as you think about Wolfe Co moving forward, you know, I know you well enough to know, like, you just strike me as an organic guy, like from top to bottom, like just like let it flow, and build it and do the hard work. But how do you think about growth, both organic and inorganic?
So our mission is service and storytelling to create a positive impact on the world.
Mm.
Combining those two things of service and storytelling. So that's where we are right now as a company, and that's what we're pursuing. If the opportunity ever arose for whether it's a merger, an acquisition, or a partnership that allowed us to expand on that, exponentially, then that's something that we would consider for sure.
But it sounds like it's not, I talked to a lot of owners who are like, yeah, I'm going to buy up everybody in the space. We're going to get huge and we're going to continue to acquire. I mean, my read is based on how much you value culture and how important that is to you that, that next partner, I mean, that would probably be the first thing you looked at, is making sure that they fit well with your current team.
Yeah.
Are there some areas that you're kind of thinking about that where, you could use, a group of individuals that have a certain specialty or something that would be like a great addition to Wolfe Co that you're not necessarily interested in building yourself?
Eventually a sales team.
Okay.
Right now, new business development is my purview,
Mhm.
and I'm not really a salesperson. I'm kind of introverted like you. I'd rather be walking in the woods, talking to a tree.
Or about trees. You
Yeah.
seem to know every single one in the woods.
Yeah. But, as we continue to grow and as we expand throughout the state of Alabama and into the Southeast, like we're going to need boots on the ground in different areas beyond North Alabama. I do believe, because I believe the world is shifting into this digital space where people are realizing, hey, it's not enough just to have a website or just to post on Facebook or even LinkedIn
Mhm.
a couple times a month. Like everything really works together, and businesses need that, I would say, full spectrum marketing push
Mhm.
if they're serious about growth. And so I think there's just a lot of opportunity for us as a company. And the way that we're approaching it too, through storytelling, we're also inundated with ads these days. A lot of us had ad blockers on our phone. We pay for premium so we don't have to listen to ads. And so storytelling, telling brand stories, really creating that human connection is what we have found for our clients that really creates advocacy among their clientels. It creates champions of the brand. If you're offering something beyond the product or service, you're offering something that's informational or educational or entertaining, and you're not asking for anything in return, that is when you really start to build a brand, that's beyond just like the quarterly dollar amounts.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say that as we grow, having people in different markets who can help us make more connections, and that's growing clientele, growing centers of influence, just meeting the right people.
So that's interesting. I mean, you and I have worked together a little bit personally on some of this, and I don't come from the space, and I think for most people, it's kind of do some LinkedIn ads, maybe do a podcast, and we think about these things in terms of channels. I think your perspective about this being one big organic story that you're telling in several different ways, but that is consistent, is really fascinating. I'm assuming that that's how you get past people like me who buy premium, so I don't have to listen to the advertisements. Like you got to, tell people something they want to hear.
Yeah, if we're working with, say, let's say if we're working with a shoe company, right? If we can get up and go to work and create a piece of content that, say, we post on social media and it helps one person that day, we're doing our jobs. And if that's a piece of content that says, hey, if you have a high arch in your foot, here are the soles that you need. And it's not necessarily trying to sell the shoe, it's trying to help that person with a high arch in their foot learn how to walk better, learning how to live better. Maybe they have pain in their back or their neck as a result of flat soles with high arches or whatever. And so, that is really our strategy with a lot of clients, is saying like, hey, if we can help one person, like I feel like today, if anybody listens to this podcast, which who knows, they will or not, but
We're gonna do our best.
if I can help one person that might be in a similar situation, then, I feel like I can rest a little easier at day's end.
That's incredible that you've connected the product market fit to, I mean, obviously it's the way it should be, but it's a very clear connection between how your product fits the market and the vision statement that you have for your company. How do you, I mean, what does the process look like when it's, something that's commoditized or, just not super interesting?
I don't know. We may not work with that.
Really? If there is no story.
Yeah. I mean, like in the early days, we took any client with a pulse and a checkbook. And as we've grown, we've sort of evolved to where we have a few more we have a little bit more inbound traffic, I would say, like companies approaching us. And so we're able to be a little more selective, even though, we're not like choosing I don't know if I want to say this or not. How do I word this correctly? What was the question again?
Just how do you deal with building that story when it's a product that doesn't seem like it has a story?
If a product doesn't have a story, I guarantee there are people behind that product who do have a story. Everybody's got a story to tell. Yeah. It might have been a single mother who created that product in her 2-bedroom apartment, raising 4 kids, and there's a story to tell there. It's like everybody has a story, and we believe that everybody's story matters. That is how we as human beings connect. I feel like if we took the time to learn more about our neighbor, to learn more about people who may not look like you, it would just make the world a better place. So yeah, while sometimes a product may seem boring, the people behind it is really what makes the
Wow.
company.
That's incredible. And then, you know, broad strokes. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there are a million permutations of this, but let's say you get to the bottom of that story, whether it's with the product or the people behind it. How do you kind of look at, okay, we're gonna make a podcast. We're gonna, push SEO. We're gonna, this is how we're gonna optimize your social media strategy. Like, just give us some high points of how that brainstorming process goes.
So when we put together a strategy, every we look at every possible avenue for both content creation and distribution. It's like you can create the best content in the world, a podcast that sounds great and the subject matter is great, or a video that visually it looks great, audio sounds great, but if you're not getting it to the right audience,
Mm-hmm.
then like what's the point? For us, it's about looking at every available channel that we believe your demographic is on. So it's creating good content, but then meeting your potential client or your customers at the crossroads of where they live online. And it's trial and error too. I think that's one of the benefits of being a small company is that we're pretty agile. Like if we're posting to LinkedIn and say your audience is not there, they're not reciprocal, then we can look at other avenues pretty quickly and make adjustments as we needed. But yeah, marketing in today's age, the distribution side of it is really tough because the digital landscape is really noisy and everybody is fighting for share of voice. And so it's just getting creative and being very strategic and very intentional
Mm-hmm.
about the content we're creating and who we're trying to reach. If you're reaching 100,000 people, great. But if you're not converting any of those people to customers, not so great. You're reaching 10 people and you're converting 4 of those into customers. I mean, that's a pretty good win rate right
Yeah.
there. And so just being super intentional about who is our client and who is their customer and where do they live online.
Mm, that's great. So obviously this is called the Sell Side Podcast, and what I do during my day job is help people walk through what to do with the thing that they've spent their life building. So our last question is always that how do you think about Wolfe Co 30 years from now, and what do you think? What do you want to happen? How would you like to see it grow, and then how would you like to see it eventually pass on to someone else?
I mean, I would love to see Wolfe Co be generational. And it doesn't have to be Wolfe Co, but our mission.
Mm-hmm.
And that is combining service and storytelling to make a positive impact on the world. So whether it's called Wolfe Co Media or it's called something else, I care more about the mission to continuing to live on for generations rather than just the name
Yeah.
of the company.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, Josh, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank
As always, I enjoy hanging out with you. We've got to spend a lot of time together in the past 2 weeks, so
Likewise.
that's awesome.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate the opportunity. And like I said, I hope that I brought something that, can help somebody.
Oh, it was incredible. I was riveted.
Come in.
Thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you.